Welcome to your weekly astrological forecast for the week of Monday, November 29th through Sunday, December 5th. And this week we do have Neptune stationing direct at 20 degrees Pisces on Wednesday, and we also have a new moon solar eclipse on Saturday at 12 degrees Sagittarius. And this will be the last eclipse of this eclipse season. And because it's a new moon solar eclipse, it's really going to start a whole new phase and get us out of the current energies that we're in now, and that we've been in for the last month or so. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment. So yeah, let's just go to Monday here. So here's the chart for Monday, November 29th. We do have Mercury and the Sun still traveling within 1 degree of each other, since they made the exact conjunction in Sagittarius on Sunday the 28th, but you can still see that they're very close together here. So we're still experiencing those themes of the mental energy, the communication, our thought processes are not objective right now. Mercury's in detriment in Sagittarius, and so it's hard for us to kind of quantify things. It's easy to be more subjective or to be, more creative maybe. It's harder to be more objective or logical right now. And this is sort of exacerbated with Mercury conjoining the Sun. Mercury is still within 1 degree of the Sun. So when we have planets conjoin the Sun, they're basically dwarfed by the Sun's light. They're not visible anymore. And so you can think of Mercury in this case being overwhelmed or overpowered by the Sun. So our mental energy is like drained right now. It can be easy to be overwhelmed or to be stressed or anxious. And so I think it's just best to kind of just double check our thinking and to be, make sure we're being thorough and not overdoing things, because we can become, extra drained mentally relatively easy at this time with this aspect. This aspect, later in the day, Mercury and the Sun will be at 8 degrees of Sagittarius, and so they'll both be sextiling Saturn by degree. Saturn at 8 degrees Aquarius, and then Mercury and Sun at 8 degrees of Sagittarius. So, although, our mental energy, our thoughts, our communication patterns all may be kind of drained or lacking energy at this time, there's this strong, harmonious aspect with Saturn. So the things that we're thinking about and talking about right now are actually helping to build a long-term goal or long-term, future plan. Our thoughts and words have extra impact today when it comes to, having long-term effects. And this is especially in regard to, social interactions or online interactions, since Saturn is in Aquarius, ruling, groups and online activity. So this may have to do with like the groups of people that we're associating with, whether that be like clubs, organizations, even just like our workplace. We're sort of thinking about the long term right now with Mercury in Sagittarius sextiling Saturn in Aquarius. We also have Moon in Libra, which is really nice. I have said before that the whole lunar cycle is sort of supercharged when we're in eclipse season. And because the moon is in Libra right now, moon is very comfortable in Libra. It's very harmonious, so we're feeling pretty balanced and pretty centered emotionally. And this is strengthened by moon's sextile with Saturn. Moon sextile with the Sun. So it's sort of a waning crescent moon right now, which is really harmonious, and it's really nice to just kind of relax or be productive. And this is even better because the moon is also trining Saturn. So moon is sextiling the Sun and Mercury. Sun and Mercury are sextiling Saturn. So really there's a lot of harmonious energy right now. It's easy to just kind of relax or to be productive. It's a really nice vibe to start the week on Monday for sure. And with the moon in Libra, Saturn Aquarius, Mercury and Sun in Sagittarius, I think the vibe is kind of like social right now. It's easy for us to kind of be jovial, or I think people are generally in a good mood right now as we start the week for sure. Also, we do have Mars in Scorpio trining Neptune. So Mars at 20 degrees Scorpio trining Neptune at 20 degrees of Pisces. This aspect to me looks very sexual. It could also have to do with like being ambitious in a creative way. So maybe you're like ambitiously achieving goals that have to do with creativity, like art or music or I don't know. Like I said, it could also be very sexual. Mars is in Scorpio, which is thought to be the most sexual sign. Mars is in domicile. So this is a very competitive energy, but then we're incorporating Neptune and Pisces, which is more dreamlike energy. So it's almost like we're competing on a subconscious level or an emotional level. We're competing with our creativity at this time. So it's also kind of a interesting aspect. So all in all, it's generally a very good vibe. I think it's a good, strong vibe. We're in a good mood, but we're also more prone to that, mental exhaustion. But all in all, it's a pretty nice way to start the week. Tuesday, November 30th, Moon is still in Libra, so it's not making that sextile to the Sun by aspect, but it still is by sign. It's still in Libra, which sextiles Sagittarius. So we're still, experiencing those same kind of good feelings and the kind of strong, upbeat background energy to this day. And then Mars is still trining Neptune. It's not exact, but we still have that aspect in effect to some degree. So there's still that sort of competitive or edgy energy with like sexuality or creativity, with our dreams or creative ambitions. All that is still really in effect on Tuesday as well. And lastly, we still have Mercury within a degree of the Sun. So pretty much Tuesday is pretty much a continuation of Monday, but Monday is more acute. There's more things like starting because the aspects are more exact on Monday and they're beginning to fade by Tuesday, but still prevalent. So, continue to have moderation, especially with anything like very analytical or detail oriented, because again, Mercury is still in detriment, conjunct the Sun. So Mercury in Sagittarius can be very philosophical and very intelligent, but like I said, it's just hard to quantify things at this time. So I would just say continue to be extra thorough in, your analytical abilities or detail oriented types of activities, also in our communications. But other than that, yeah, we still have these sextiles and trines, Libra, Sagittarius, and Aquarius, so it's still pretty warm, upbeat energy for sure. And I do just want to mention, so throughout this whole week, we are kind of building up to the new moon solar eclipse. So as the moon, is in these last couple signs before the Sun, things are sort of winding down, but it's very much hinting at new activity to come, like within the next week or so. So it's almost like, I said the calm before the storm was last week. It kind of applies to this week as well. It's like there's a kind of a build up, like a quiet build up of sorts. Let's go forward to Wednesday, December 1st, and we do have Moon entering Scorpio. And so yeah, this build up really starts to accelerate now too, because the moon is now only one sign away from the Sun, and the moon is like no longer really visible, or it's like barely visible at this time. It's turning into a sliver of a crescent and becoming obscured as we go on here into the week. And this is almost very fitting for Moon in Scorpio as well, because Scorpio tends to be sort of hidden anyway. So it's almost like our emotional attitudes are becoming more quiet, but also very much more subconscious. And again, this alludes to increased activity in the near future. And this day is also important because we have Neptune turning direct at 20 degrees of Pisces. So this is pretty meaningful. So Neptune, first of all, is a very far outer planet, and so it does spend almost half its time retrograde, and it's such a slow planet that it's stationary a lot of the time. Generally, we would say planets are intensified when they're stationary, but again, because Neptune is stationary most of the time, it's pretty much always intensified. It's such a slow, intense energy. And in Pisces, it's very creative. It's boosting our spirituality, our dreams, our creativity, but it's also boosting deception and illusion as well. So there's been a lot of that for the last several years, and there will continue to be for the next few years as well. However, with Neptune retrograde planets are almost kind of asleep or subdued in a way. And so with Neptune retrograde over the last several months, we could actually think more clearly and things were more realistic. Now as Neptune turns direct on Wednesday, December 1st, it's like we can go into fantasy farther now, or again, all the deception, illusion, dreams, creativity. It's like these sort of non-physical or imaginary realms are more active now that Neptune's turning direct. And I also always say that with these outer planets in general, really all of them, when they're direct, there's more activity happening on a global or a public sphere. on a universal sphere, there's just generally more activity, more things happening in a very linear, tangible way. Versus when the planets are retrograde, there's more things happening behind the scenes, generally speaking. Now, this is Neptune we're talking about, so this can boost like a lot of deception. So maybe things are happening in the public sphere, but there's some kind of illusion or mystery. Things are not always clear, but there still is that increased activity with we now have almost all the planets direct. Every single planet is direct now on December 1st, except for Uranus. So generally, there's just a lot of new activity happening, both in our personal lives as well as on a public plane or you know societal or governmental level as well. Going forward to Thursday, December 2nd, we do have Moon crossing over Mars in at around 22 degrees of Scorpio, and it's still within range of that trine that it made to Neptune earlier this week. So Moon will just be briefly crossing over Mars at 22 degrees Scorpio, and then Neptune's still at 20 degrees of Pisces. So again, there's a lot of like dreaminess and creativity, but it's in a sort of surprisingly competitive manner. And I think we'll see what that exactly means as we get into the week and really experience this. But there's some kind of boosted like sexuality or the reason why sex is sort of related to this is because it is creativity, but it's something that's very like emotionally deep and something that's not always flaunted. Like I think a lot of times with sexuality, there's a sort of like it's part of it's like kind of kept under wraps, or it's like alluded to in a way. It's like something more deep than it is on the surface, if that makes sense. So it doesn't have to be sex necessarily, but there's some kind of like deep creativity or passion, deep emotion coming into play right now on Thursday, December 2nd. Really brought to light by the moon here. But this does look really kind of secretive or even dark or kind of obscured because, again, the moon is not even visible at this time. And Scorpio is naturally sort of deceptive or, you know, it naturally kind of hides things from the light anyway. So there's a lot of like nuance here. There's a lot of like subdued passion and energy and emotion, creativity. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's go forward to Friday, December 3rd. Now, depending on where you are, you may have the new moon solar eclipse happen very late on Friday the 3rd or very early on Saturday, December 4th. In my time zone, Eastern Standard Time, it happens at about 2:30 a.m. on Saturday, so I will just cover it mostly on Saturday. But for everyone else, we're already pretty much feeling the effects of this new moon solar eclipse because the moon is in Sagittarius, so it's only a few degrees away from the sun, all day on Friday. And really, Mercury, Sun, and Moon are pretty much conjunct in Sagittarius. They're very, very much clustered together. So the focus is overwhelmingly on a new beginning in Sagittarius. So this could be increased activity involving higher learning. So that would be universities, but it also applies to religion, to churches to some extent, like new activity there. Also new activity with long-term travel or really just higher learning in general. And we all have different ways that we go about our higher learning, but that's ultimately what Sagittarius rules. Really any experience that kind of expands your mind or your soul. That's what Sagittarius is all about. So there's a lot of new activity, new beginnings here. And to see more specifically about how these energies affect you, you can look to where Sagittarius falls in your chart for more information about that. But yeah, really Friday is kind of just a build-up, and it's a very quiet build-up. So things are kind of intense, but it's almost like they're almost kind of vacant right now. A lot of times when you have conjunctions like this, especially right before a conjunction, they're not always tangible in the moment because this is their very last part of the whole cycle. So things actually become kind of quiet or subdued. It's only later that we see how everything is actually beginning at this time, but these are very quiet beginnings, so they're not always tangible just yet. Other than that, I still think it's a pretty positive vibe on Friday, but there's just this feeling of like, some kind of impending activity, or there's something looming on the horizon, which can be kind of an eerie feeling. But other than that, we have these Sagittarius planets, Mercury, Sun, and Moon, all kind of sextiling Saturn still, roughly speaking. So there's still that really strong positive vibe. We're still feeling pretty solid here, and there's a lot of activity happening in the short term that will ultimately lead to the long term. So there's a lot of long term things being kind of set up right now in sort of a positive, easy way. And then going to the big day here, Saturday, December 4th, we have this new moon solar eclipse at 12 degrees Sagittarius, and I'll go to the exact chart here. So here you can see Eastern Standard Time. It's happening at around 2:30 a.m., 12 degrees Sagittarius. There's no exact aspects with this new moon solar eclipse, but there are a couple that are off by a few degrees. So Mercury is conjunct this eclipse with an orb of 3 degrees, and we also have Saturn sextiling this eclipse with an orb of 3 degrees as well. And so this really just points to a new beginning with our thoughts, our feelings, emotions. What else here? Again, it's about that increased activity with long-term, long-range travel, higher learning, education. There could be new events here in these areas and increased activity here. There can also just be like a trippy feeling. So, this is like a super new moon. And so strange events can happen right now. It could be almost like a Mercury retrograde feeling, just because things are sort of unusual, or there's just a lot of unexpected developments right now happening. But again, this is almost kind of quiet and subdued. There's a lot of humble beginnings. So right now, with this new moon solar eclipse, this is where the seeds are planted, basically. So there is a new beginning, but you won't really appreciate the effects of this because they're not fully tangible yet. They're just in the ether coming to this earth, basically. And that's why these new moon solar eclipses, really any new moon, they're basically like portals. And pagan people would have like rituals around, and some still do have rituals around these events, because they do sort of open up portals where new energies can come into the world and new themes begin. It's a new chapter of sorts. But again, it's very quiet. The seeds are being planted right now, so they won't fully sprout and blossom until we have that first quarter moon in about a week. By then, we'll really be experiencing things that ultimately are beginning right now. But by then, they'll be full blown and fully tangible. But these are just kind of the humble beginnings, and they may be tangible, but again, it's sort of quiet here. But later, you can look for new beginnings that started now, having to do with accessing the higher mind and higher consciousness, basically, that Sagittarius is moving toward, or moving us toward. And again, I just want to touch again on that focus on like the long term, because I think Sagittarius is sort of a far-reaching sign. It sort of dreams big, and so it's ultimately kind of thinking about the future, thinking about big plans. And then with this sextile to Saturn in Aquarius, that really just strengthens that emphasis, basically. So I do think this is very much setting up a long-term plan here, whether we're aware of it or not in the moment, if that makes sense. But what's happening now will create a whole picture, or create a lot of themes that we will experience later. Lastly, going to December 5th, Sunday, we have the moon entering Capricorn, and this is interesting to me. So pretty quickly, so within a day from the new moon solar eclipse, the moon changes signs and goes into Capricorn. And Capricorn is naturally, much more grounded and sort of quiet sign compared to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is yang, it's fire, so it's much more, loud and provocative and brilliantly lit. It's, there's a lot more action and drama happening on, Friday and Saturday. But with Sunday, with the moon going into Capricorn, everything becomes much more focused and much more heavy almost. And there's different pros and cons to this. I mean, it can be nice to have that kind of grounding effect, and things kind of cool off after maybe the more dramatic Sagittarius moon that we experienced for the couple days prior. But it can also be kind of a rude awakening in a way. We can kind of, dream and imagine things when Moon is in Sagittarius, and Moon in Capricorn is just such a more disciplined energy, so it can be kind of a difficult transition for us. But I do think now that we've had this new moon, and the moon is, maybe just becoming visible now as a waxing crescent, I think it's really nice to have the moon building light in the sign of Capricorn, because Capricorn is such a good energy for, building long-term plans, and showing up every day, having that energy put in to create something really great, over time, to be very goal oriented and such. So, so on the one hand, it could be a little bit depressing or heavy. It could be kind of an abrupt change on Sunday. But on the other hand, I think there's this really steady, productive nature about it. Like we can really feel like we're working towards something in a very gradual, rewarding type of way. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, these are still kind of humble beginnings. It won't be till, midweek now, mid next week, that we'll really start to observe the effects of what truly began with this new moon solar eclipse. So that's what I have for you for this week. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions or if you'd like a reading, you can always email me at manic.mercurian@gmail.com or just leave a comment on one of my videos. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you later.